Good morning. Welcome to Errol's Eye On. I'm Alan Wozni, and joining me from his home studio for episode Errol Vas is joining me for episode number 13. Errol, good morning or good evening again.
Alan, how are you doing?
Terrific. It's 1st of December. I don't know what it's like in China, but there's a lot of people that think 1st of December is the first day of winter. I know the summer solstice or the winter solstice starts on the 21st, but I guess it officially is the first day of Christmas or winter together.
Yeah, today, December 1st, we had the first snowfall here in Hangzhou. So it's been snowing all day, which I
Yeah.
really like. So yeah, it really feels like it's the beginning of winter.
Isn't that, because the first we really had right after Halloween, November 1st. That's kind of the Canadian tradition. And it's cold, -20 today. And what's the weather like there? I guess it must be zero-ish for you.
Yeah, and that kind of feels cold for me right now.
Well, you've got I wanted to just before we get into this episode 13, you're going to tell me what you got your eye on today. You're wearing a branded shirt. I'd never heard of Seas Wind. I'm drinking from a Starbucks mug. I mean, brands, they're all around us, right? We've talked about this. And I think today it fits well into today's topic because this is marketing during a recession, right? That's really what you want to talk about.
Yeah, it does fit in great with today's topic. Yeah, marketing during a recession. So what to do and what not to do.
Because I mean, brand, this is where brands really play out, right? Because we've had in the past, we've talked about brands. And I don't know, Seas Wind a brand? Is a local brand? Where is that one? Or is that just something you threw on a t-shirt?
I just threw it on. I'm not too sure, but in China you have all these random T-shirts and hoodies and stuff. So it could be a brand. It might not be.
It looks good. You got to look like you just finished a workout, or you probably did. I'm sure you did.
You know what? Not today. I skipped. Today I skipped. It's just cold. It's a little cold, so
Well, skipping is a good
put on the
workout though.
comfortable
For
clothes.
the cardio, skipping is good. So that's all right. Of the wrong kind of skipping. All right. So Aaron, what do you have your eye on today? Let's deep dive. Let's get into a deep dive here.
Yeah, so marketing during a recession, what to do and what not to do. So, the reason why I want to talk about this is because I've been kind of reading and hearing, oh, we might go into a recession, right? I
Yeah.
read the other day the West might narrowly escape it, might narrowly miss it. I'm not too sure, but still, I think it's good for everyone out there to know what to do and what not to do in terms of your marketing during a recession, sorry.
The reception.
Now, yeah. During recession, the first thing that you want to do is cut back costs, right? You want to cut costs, you need to start saving money a bit. And it's almost a knee-jerk reaction in marketing is, oh, recession, let's cut back on our advertising. So that's my first tip. Number one, do not cut back on your advertising.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is this. So it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction and it's very reactive, right? Oh, recession, let's react to that. Now, the problem with that is uh, when you're tackling strategy from a reactive standpoint, it's a short-sighted way of doing things, right? You need to keep that long-sighted, that long-sighted approach to what you're doing. So when the recession comes, most of your competitors, maybe a lot of your competitors, especially the smaller ones, are going to cut their advertising because that's just the easiest way to really cut back costs. Now, what that does is it creates an opportunity. Now, the advertising side, it isn't as competitive. It's going to cost less to acquire customers, and it's going to be open for the taking. So during recession is a great time to double down on your advertising.
It's interesting.
And
It's
there's
interesting you say that because it's kind of like this. People, it's that emotional. It's almost emotional where they think that, because you've said their knee jerk reaction is to just shut it down or close it down or cut costs, and they're not.
yeah.
So it's emotionally they're bringing themselves down. There's a recession. I'm down. And I wonder, how do you combat that? I mean, so I hear what you're saying. But how do you combat that?
Mhm.
I don't, Errol, sorry, the sales are down, the markets are down, the global recession is happening. How do you combat that? Okay, it's nice to put an ad out there, but I hear what you're saying. But
Yeah. I would say first off, explain is having a long view, a long a strategy for the long term, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you might knee-jerk reaction cut off advertising in the recession. That's very short-sighted and that's very reactive. Whereas if you say, you know what, this is a good time when while everyone else is cutting for me to push forward. And so that's the first piece of advice. But I also have a couple case studies that kind
Good.
of show why this is good. So
Good.
there's a few stats. So first, companies that cut their advertising spend for 1 year, they see a decrease in sales on average of 16% year over year. After the second year, that number goes up to 25% per year. And this especially holds true for smaller businesses. So cutting your advertising is going to cut your sales on average 16%. The second bit is I have two case studies. Both are from recession period. So back in the Great Depression, the greatest recession of all, the Great Depression, there was was uh, Kellogg's, and there was Post. There's another
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
brand Post. Yeah, they're duking out. Post has the market share. Post is in the lead. Recession comes, Post cuts their advertising. Kellogg's doubles down on their advertising. They come out with Rice Krispies, so
Yeah.
they develop a new product. They double down the advertising. They come out with that Snap, Crackle, and Pop
So that was during the in the
Elf
30s. Like,
advertisement.
yeah, that was in the
Yeah, and
30s.
so they did that. It was wildly successful, and then they just stormed the market share and they took over. So boom, they're up front. So that was one play that they did during the recession that really paid off. Last recession we had was not the last one, sorry, the one in 1991, right? That was the last recession. Sorry, not the last recession. The recession before last in 1991. Yes. McDonald's,
The 90s. Yeah.
Pizza
Okay.
Hut.
Yeah.
Yeah. McDonald's, Pizza Hut, and who was the other player there? It was Taco
Burger
Bell.
King, Queens, Burger
Yeah,
King, Dairy Queen. No, Queen. How many Queens, Kings, and
yeah,
we're missing the Jack, a Joker. Was there a Jack? There was Jack in the Box, right? So there, you
yeah. There's
got
Jack
Burger
in the
King.
Box, but for these in this case study, there's three. There's McDonald's,
Yeah.
Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut. So during the recession in 1991, McDonald's cut out their advertising spend, and that resulted in a 20% decrease in sales.
Right.
So that's what they got. Uh, Pizza Hut stormed through with their advertising. They really pushed it, as did Taco Bell. Pizza Hut, uh, Pizza Hut enjoyed a 60% increase in sales that year, and Taco Bell had a 40% increase. So these are two companies that, although the recession hit, they doubled down on their strategy. They looked to the long term,
Yeah.
and they had some big wins.
So those are so those are eras. You're quoting where the statistics are basically the ad spend was very much dominated by traditional TV, radio, television, newspaper, billboards, right?
Mhm.
Particularly in the 90s, those were
Yeah.
big. And so today's where it's much more affordable on a social media. It'd be nice to see the comparisons, say the 2008 crash when sort of social media is coming, or the recent, they're not really, right. If you take ad spend during massive hit COVID, right? That was a
Mm.
massive downturn that probably trumped Donald, no pun intended, dropped Donald Trump, but probably trumped those in terms of the immediate effect, right? I don't know, the markets, if you take, the Great Depression, that was a prolonged recession. 91 was a hard recession. I started working I remember in the 90s, and they laid off a lot of people here in Canada, in the accounting
Mhm.
profession. So I'm
Mm.
just, I hear this. So it's like, all right, so McDonald's decrease. McDonald's has such penetration that they have the long haul, right? I mean, kids still go to McDonald's.
Yeah.
My parents go,
Exactly.
it's like, it's a legacy almost.
It's a legacy. It has a bit of nostalgia there. And the thing
Yeah.
about this is for the big brands, the negative effects are a bit less. So for example, McDonald's can cut its advertising spend, but they'll still be able to enjoy growth in their
Yeah.
sales. I mean,
Yeah.
back in the recession, they didn't that one time. But for a smaller company, it's almost as soon as you cut out your advertising, you can expect to reduce your sales.
Okay. So you're saying that's what to do is to double down. Okay. So
Yeah.
you know,
Continue on the path. Yeah, don't be reactionary. Think in the long term, have a long-term view, long-term strategy.
okay, because I mean this. So let's fast forward now into the, so during COVID, you have to be sensitive to what's happening. Changing your have you come across, changing your marketing strategy and being sensitive to your viewers, sensitive to the recipient of the audience. Is there anything in your, in your repertoire on that? Because it's, kind of COVID was like people, well, they stopped advertising and they had to look at, how to advertise, or maybe just not, right? Because that was a case where
Hmm.
it just didn't make sense for a lot of folks because they didn't know, because it was new.
Yeah, and that's where, I mean, the internet marketing comes in, right? Actually, during COVID was some of the best times for e-commerce companies. It was rapid. It was rapid growth.
Yeah.
So advertising during COVID, maybe not on traditional mediums, but through like PPC advertising, pay per click, e-commerce advertising, stuff like that was really lucrative. So I mean, if anything, COVID just made advertising more cutthroat, made it more competitive. So it the way that advertising reacted to COVID was almost opposite of how advertising reacts to a recession. So in a recession, everyone cuts down. During COVID, everyone was spending more on advertising because everyone was at home buying things.
Yeah. So that created a dramatic change in behaviors everywhere. So, the companies themselves, there's still that COVID. I don't know if you're seeing that. Well, I guess China, you're still having this shutdowns, and it's causing market havocs or market. But I think this time they're not so dramatic. But did you see in your local, I mean, because you've had a lot of shutdowns in China over the last few months, or since the rest of the world kind of opened up. But was it the same in your province that you're in?
Fortunately, in the city I'm in, it's been very, very open. It's
Yeah.
been controlled. So I personally haven't been affected too much, which I'm very grateful for. Um, but yeah, in terms of how that's affected advertising, I guess you could say here in China, I noticed um, a lot of the mom pop shops,
Yeah.
local family shops, stuff had to close down, and they relied more on like in-person advertising stuff on the street. When you didn't have people out on the street, I mean, there's no one to advertise to, so it affected in that sense. But inside China, when COVID hit, e-commerce marketing, PPC, pay per click, it all just it just exploded. I mean, even influencer marketing exploded. So everyone's online buying. So yeah, so that's kind of how COVID has affected the advertising.
How's your
Um,
how have your clients? Like, I mean, you're working with, and you talk about doubling down on marketing or advertising. We do you have some examples of where the practical side? First of all, if your budget's lower, but how can you double down? I'll give you the example. When I was living in
yeah.
the Middle East and I was in Qatar during obviously before the World Cup, but they were building up to the World Cup. But when oil prices tanked in 2015-16, the marketing budgets also tanked. So they were in the stories I used to hear. They'd have a $100,000 budget. They were giving away iPads and trips on Qatar Airways. And then when the oil prices tanked and Qatar Foundation was, these are people literally telling me these stories, events management people, they were giving, they had a $10,000 budget. So it's by 10, literally 90% reduction. And they were giving away clicker pens and, pads of paper, little rubber balls, right? So it changed
Yeah.
dramatically. But you had the
Yeah.
same people fighting for the marketing dollar, or you know what I mean, that the tension of people.
Yeah. So during recession, um, that's a good point. So what you would want to do is focus on ROI. So focus on what's giving you good returns,
Yeah.
what's converting well. So let's say you need to save some money. I mean, first step is look at what marketing campaigns are yielding high returns, right? If you have a if, keep make sure that you keep your best campaigns on, right? Especially when it comes to pay per click or e-commerce advertising, running ads online. Yeah, it's okay if you need to prune or you need to pause or shut down some of the
Yeah.
campaigns that aren't performing too well, but really your first step is ensuring that you're well running campaigns, ones that are doing good. Keep those on, um, and try to, yeah, bear for the long term. So yeah, how to so you kind of gave an example uh of how to like downsize the quality of the marketing, I guess, went from iPads to clicker pens.
Well, yeah, like
What
like
I
those giveaway pens with the name on it, and those little
Yeah.
pop up ball, like it's like literally it was, but there was the same amount of people, right? I mean, I guess you're seeing massive disruption with Twitter and a lot of the tech companies, right? Because they overhired, and the first ones to
Yeah.
go are some of the contractors, the marketing people, the folks that are, you know, they're expendable this way. So in that case, the
Mhm.
in-house people have the pressure is going to be on them to double down, but they're just, I
Yeah.
guess you've got that, as I said, the human element, the emotion is down. So, I guess how to motivate the staff if in during the downturn, right, to get excited about their advertising efforts, right? It's one thing to pay for ads. It's another thing to be motivated to
Yeah.
make posts that match up that or to support that, right? You mean that as a
And
you know,
I think for marketers, um, passionate marketers, marketers who really want to be good at what they do, I think they just need to accept that a recession or a budget cut is part of the game, and a really good marketer is going to figure out how to make it work, right? When you're dealing with these big budgets, nice cushy budgets, it makes for easy sailing, right? And when you need to cut down on those budgets, and that forces you to be a little bit smarter, to be a little bit more scrappy, to get a little bit more innovative, right? And so that's the challenge. So if you can find some fun in the challenge, although you will be under stress, if you can kind of find the fun out of it, look at the challenge of it, that's a good way to keep people motivated.
so it sounds to me, and you've mentioned this a couple of times, the PPC or the pay per clicks, and sort of that the analytics that you can get, what's working, where you would double down your efforts. You have a couple of
Hmm.
marketing tech solutions that could probably help. If this is, are we going to go back to your Monday.com because today is Thursday, and I think
In this
it's a little
case,
late to go
Monday
to the
cannot
Monday.
save us. Yeah. Well, you know what? Advertising platforms, that's the thing you talked about back in the 90s, how you couldn't really attribute ROI to a
Yeah.
TV ad or anything like that. But with online marketing, pretty much across most platforms, you get pretty accurate data. The numbers are all there, so it's very easy to see where you're getting a return on your investment. So, anyone who has a sense in, I guess, in marketing or data analytics would be able to tell you, okay, so this is what's working, this isn't. Uh, if you need to cut out some spend, cut out these campaigns because they're not returning as well as the others. So it is pretty easy for the online marketing pay per click to see what's working and what isn't, and to prune what isn't.
It's
Um,
incredible. It's incredible when you talk about, because you've frozen, your screen's frozen, but your voice is still there. um,
oh, really?
but it's incredible, like what, in terms of what works and what doesn't. I'm just giving you a very limited example. One of the posts from one of our past episodes. So, Errol, I just wanted to, the point I wanted to make is really just, it's a very, 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 the sample size is minimal. But in terms of the medium, we talked earlier about the 90s, traditional media and social media. So which platform is
Mhm.
working, which post is working, and double down. And I'm just going to go to two examples. So Gary Vaynerchuk often talks about one stupid post he made eating raspberries or blueberries or whatever it is, right? And he's like, that's been my best performing post. All he did was, but he's got like 1 million followers or whatever, 1 million+ followers, right? And so some stupid post about him eating blueberries, and he kept going on about it. And he's like, I posted it again, and it's for whatever reasons those go viral. For you and I, there was a post I made on Instagram, and it was, for one of ours, and it went, I think, at nearly 5,000 views, most I've ever had in 4 years or 5 years on that platform. I posted the exact same. It's a 2-minute short, the ones you were creating on TikTok,
Mhm.
zero,
Mhm.
zero views. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm saying, the two platforms. So I thought I'll double down. I thought I was going to double down. I posted that across LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and it did not get the same play. So that was it. It was very narrow. But I'm just saying, for as a marketer, I would double down on Instagram and do that again. But there's no guarantees of success. So if I'm deploying money, I might get false signals. Maybe that's a false signal, right? For me, it was a false signal.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for organics, it can be that way because there's a lot of dependency on an algorithm.
Yeah.
Um, the same with PPC advertising, but with PPC, you're getting real-time data, so
Yeah.
it's much easier to kind of pinpoint if something's working and if something isn't. But still, the overarching um, reaction to recession by a company is to cut spend, right?
Yeah.
So instead of cutting spend on your advertising or to relieve the amount of spend you're going to cut on your advertising, a good place to look is your tech stack. Last episode, Alan, we were talking about how I said get a software person for your company and start integrating all these different softwares. But anyone who does that, they'll know that it gets out of control after a couple of years. You have all these different softwares that you're
Yeah.
subscribed to.
Yes.
You might
Yes.
have 100 people who have accounts on that software, and so has left after a year or two, and then you have all these dormant accounts that you're still paying for. At any amount of time, you can probably sit back, take a look at all of your current tech, look at your tech stack, and find certain apps that you don't need anymore. Maybe you could end those subscriptions. Maybe you see that you're paying for, I don't know, 500 HubSpot accounts when you really only need like 200 or something around
Yeah.
there. Oh, that's kind of a steep example, but cutting back on your tech stack and optimizing your tech stack can also save, especially if you're a large company, can save you a lot of money. So that's a good way that a marketing department can first alleviate some spend before thinking about cutting their advertising.
Yeah. I don't want to belabor the point. I just think that a lot of marketing folks, they rely on the tech, or they rely on the old traditional way of doing things. And to market the company new, finding whether it's a podcast, whether it's, posting more often, more frequently themselves, being that social media ambassador or being the ambassador to the company. And it is hard during so relying on advertisements or advertising, and that, to me, that's great. But if I'm not viewing it, I'm not seeing those ads. And you're right, that's where the pay per clicks, and where you can get that,
Hmm.
the metrics, the metrics on the drill through, or the what they call the heat sensing. You probably know that term in the marketing, the heat tracing. They trace through the click, and where does it say, stickability to a website. There's so much more to it. I
Yeah.
think that those statistics may be great, but at the end of the day, if people aren't buying, or people aren't, you're not getting their attention fully. I don't know if it's the tech, if the running ads is the solution. I'm just thinking it's the holistic approach. I don't know if you have a view on that. It's just my feelings, because
Yeah,
people are
definitely.
down as well. Like the recipient of your message is also, they're down. Recession's down. Their
Yeah.
moods are down. Yeah.
Yeah, and that once again that plays into having a long-term strategy view. So you might be running some campaigns during the recession and they're not converting as well. You're not getting as many sales off of it.
Yeah.
But if you stay steady with that, once the recession is over, once consumers have more money in their pockets, you're going to be the brand that's top of mind. You're going to be the brand that they remember, right? So you may not get a return now, but if you if you bet money on it, you're gonna get a return later, right? And so that's kind of the name of the game. And some of those case studies that I spoke about earlier, that's kind of what they experienced as well.
But I
So
like that, the Rice
they,
Krispies. So
yeah.
they came up with a new
Hmm.
product during that time, right? So and it had that.
Not only did they do more marketing, they came up with a new product and launched a new product, which is not easy to do during a recession. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to take the final words. I'm going to get, not the final words. I'm going to put it back to you. But your shirt, or the brand, whatever, it sees wind, sees the day, sees it. I mean,
Hmm.
there's the wind's in your sails. You can sort of take, that literally is it. Sees it today, sees the opportunity, and your shirt says it
Sees the wind.
sees the wind.
Yeah.
Well,
Sees
Errol,
the
any last
wind. Yeah.
any last suggestions for, for those out there that want to create the Rice Krispies, snap, crackle, and pop?
Yeah. So during a recession, what to do and what not to do with your marketing. Number one, try not to cut back on your advertising. If anything, double down on it because it's the least competitive time to do so, and you're going to be front and center with your audience. Number two, If you need to cut costs, look at cutting costs in your tech stack. That's always a good place
Good.
where you can
Yeah.
probably find some money to save. Yeah. And yeah, point number 3 is during recession, try not to have a short-term reactive mindset. Think about the long term, think about your long-term play. And if you've calculated it, you can risk a little bit of money now and win big later.
Seize the wind.
Seize the wind.
Errol, have a great rest of the week, and we'll look forward to our next chat.
All right, sounds good, Alan. Have a good
Yeah.
one.
Cheers.